Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving deep into, well, one of the biggest mysteries out there, consciousness.
Hmm.
What is it exactly? It feels like, you know it intimately, you're using it right now, but then you try to pin it down, define it.
And it gets really slippery.
Yeah.
Scientists, philosophers, they all grapple with it. It's kind of fundamental to us, this awareness,
Which
but
we don't fully get it. It's a bit unsettling, right?
it is. And the sources we're looking at today make a point to distinguish it from intelligence. They're related, obviously, but not the same thing.
Good point. We'll park that distinction for now, but keep it in mind. So, for this deep dive, your deep dive into these sources, the mission is really to trace one particular idea.
Yeah, this perspective that consciousness wasn't like an overnight invention. It evolved
Mm-hmm.
gradually,
Over millions and millions of years.
hundreds of millions potentially,
Hmm.
through natural selection. It's presented as less of a switch, more of a gradient, countless tiny steps building up.
Okay, so we're kind of reverse engineering a possible path, starting from things we're pretty sure aren't conscious and
Right.
seeing how we might get to, well, us, complex awareness. So, the big question the sources pose right at the start is, where does this journey even begin? What's the first flicker?
Well, the usual starting point isn't, say, a rock. Most people agree on that.
Yeah, a stone isn't sitting there having deep thoughts.
Yeah.
Seems like a safe bet.
Although the material does briefly mention panpsychism, this philosophical idea that maybe consciousness is everywhere, even in inanimate objects.
Oh, right. But from a practical, observable standpoint.
From a behavioral view, there's just no evidence. Stones don't do anything that suggests an inner life.
So a better starting point is life itself, things that need to survive.
Exactly. Living things. They sustain themselves, reproduce, they need energy. And this evolutionary angle suggests that the very earliest sort of proto-consciousness was tied to that fundamental need.
The need for energy. Food.
Precisely. It's about directing a mobile self, something that can actually move towards energy sources when it needs them.
Okay, so movement is key, but specifically movement tied to survival.
Yes, but not just random movement. The sources give an example, this tiny, simple animal, Trachophax adherens. It just sort of drifts around,
Okay.
slows down if it bumps into nutrients, speeds up if it doesn't. It works, it finds food eventually just by sort of spending more time where food happens to be.
Ah, so it's reacting, but it's not really aiming for anything specific. It's not directed.
Exactly. There's no apparent need for that creature to be aware or have a goal. So the perspective here is that the first big step, the first real innovation on this path, wasn't just moving, but moving directionally.
Towards the good stuff, away from the bad stuff.
Towards food, away from danger.
Like that little worm example, Dgygia tigrina, the one with the sort of googly-looking eyes.
That's a great one from the sources, yeah. And what's really interesting there is movement isn't just like a knee-jerk reaction. It actually depends on its internal state.
You mean like whether it's hungry or not?
Exactly. If it's hungry, it actively follows chemical trails in the water. It's basically smelling its way towards food, moving towards the stronger scent.
Okay, so it's using its senses to seek something out based on an internal need, hunger.
Right. It follows the scent gradient, finds the food, eats. Then, presumably, its internal state changes. It's full and it behaves differently. But there's still a limitation noted here.
Oh, what's that?
Even though it's directed movement, following a scent, the worm doesn't seem to have a mental picture of its destination. It's just following the strongest smell right now.
It's still locked into the immediate sensory signal. It doesn't see the goal from afar.
Precisely. Which brings us neatly to the next suggested development, getting perception that works across a distance.
Like vision, eyes.
Eyes, yeah. That seems to be a huge evolutionary step according to this view.
I can imagine suddenly you can see where you're going.
Right. An optical system, even a basic one, changes everything. It gives you context, depth perception, a sense of the space you're in and where the food is within that space.
It feels like a big jump towards the kind of awareness we recognize. You can see the target and lock onto it.
You can visualize it, head towards it, across a distance. But the sources point out another limitation, even with vision.
Still not the full picture.
Still not quite there. You can pursue the goal, yes, but only really effectively as long as you can see it.
Ah, so if it ducks behind a tree or goes out of sight?
You might lose track. You might stop pursuing it because the immediate visual cue is gone.
Okay. So what bridges that gap? How do you keep track of something you can't currently see?
This is where the next really crucial step happens, and it's something going on inside the animal's head, so to speak.
An internal process.
Yes, the development of some kind of inner representation of the world, building an internal model or map.
Like a little mental map of your surroundings.
Sort of, yeah. And this is incredibly powerful because now the animal can potentially keep searching for that food even if it's temporarily hidden. It can maintain focus on what's important because it has this internal framework.
The world isn't just what you see right now. It's a place you kind of know and remember.
Exactly. It becomes familiar. And this ties directly into the emergence of memory.
Right. If you have an inner model, you can remember things about it,
Yeah.
where things were.
Yes. Animals can get distracted, maybe chase something else for a second, but then return to their original path because they remember the goal. And a related idea here is object permanence.
Ah, the classic developmental milestone. Knowing something still exists even when you hide it.
That's the one. We see it in human babies, usually around, 8 months old. They finally get that peekaboo isn't making you actually disappear.
Right.
But the sources mention something amazing, baby chickens. They seem to grasp object permanence within just a day or two of hatching.
A day or two. Wow, that's incredibly fast. That really highlights how differently these things can develop.
It's astonishing, isn't it? And this ability, holding something in mind when it's not perceptually present, strongly suggests, well, at least a basic sense of time.
Because you're relating to something that was there or will be there, not just what is right now.
Exactly. You're moving beyond just the immediate present moment, and that opens the door to looking ahead, anticipating the future.
Which lets you do things like wait for a better reward, delayed gratification.
That's a key behavior enabled by this, yeah. The sources mention adult chickens again. Apparently they can resist a small snack right now if they learn a bigger meal is coming later.
Huh. Some self-control there. Better than some humans I know.
Well, it shows how fundamental these capacities might be. And then you have the western scrub jays. They take it even further.
Oh, the birds that hide food.
Caching, yes, they
Yeah.
cache food for later. That already shows planning and memory tied to the future. But they do something even more remarkable. If a scrub jay hides food and it notices another jay watching it, it will often wait until the observer leaves, then dig up the food and hide it somewhere else.
Whoa, okay, wait. That's different. That sounds like it knows the other birds saw it and might come back to steal it.
Precisely. This behavior strongly suggests they understand that other individuals are also selves, with their own awareness, potentially their own intentions like theft, and crucially, that they saw the world from a different perspective that included watching the hiding spot.
It's like they're reading the other bird's mind in a way.
That's basically what it points towards, an ability often called theory of mind, understanding that others have mental states, beliefs, desires, perspectives that can be different from your own.
And the sources say this mind reading is a really big deal for consciousness.
Huge. It's seen as crucial for more complex forms of consciousness. It allows for sophisticated social strategies, cooperation, deception, empathy maybe. It's about navigating a world full of other minds.
Okay, wow. So we've gone from just needing food to moving towards it, seeing it, remembering it, planning for it, and now understanding that others might want it too. What's the next big leap, especially for humans, according to this view?
Language. The sources frame language as something that takes that inner representation and that ability to understand other minds and just turbocharges them.
How so? What does language add?
Well, with language, we can build incredibly complex ideas, hypotheses about how things work. We can make detailed long-range plans and, crucially, share them with others.
Communication becomes much more powerful.
Massively. And maybe most significantly, language allows us to turn that awareness back onto ourselves, to think about ourselves, our thoughts, our place in the universe.
And even to think about our own consciousness, which is
exactly what we're doing right now in this conversation, using language to explore these ideas from the sources. It brings it all full circle.
It really does. So just to recap the journey laid out in this material, it starts with the basic need for energy driving simple motion.
Which evolves into directed motion using senses, then adding distance perception like vision.
Then building those internal models, leading to memory, object permanence, a sense of time.
Then the capacity to anticipate the future, understand other minds.
And finally, language amplifying all of this into the kind of complex, self-aware consciousness we experience.
That's the proposed pathway. And it anchors consciousness, even in its most complex forms, back to that fundamental biological drive, the directed motion of a hungry self trying to survive.
Which, as you said, might explain why we humans put so much effort and ingenuity into food even today. That core drive is still humming away beneath everything
It
else.
connects back, yeah. And tracing these possible steps, these building blocks, hopefully helps shed some light on the foundations of your own awareness.
Absolutely. Okay, so based only on this perspective we've explored today, what's a final thought for you, the listener, to chew on?
Hmm, well, maybe this. If consciousness really is a gradient, built up incrementally from something as basic as directed movement towards food, what might that imply about the potential for some flicker of awareness, however minimal, in simpler life forms we usually dismiss as unconscious?
Or maybe consider the scrub jay again, thinking about its clever caching and rehiding. Where do you, in your own observations of animals, start to see the line blur between really complex learned behavior and something that feels more like genuine mind reading? Where does instinct end and understanding begin?